You've made it to the last video in the Hire series, and this is the most exciting in my opinion. It's the offer process. Now, I will film a separate series where I go through an offer or two via Vidyard, so you can actually navigate through what it looks like. But this is by far the most in-depth and detailed accounting that you are going to get, short of calling a legal individual to review an offer. You'd have to pay thousands of dollars to do that. Whether your recruiter goes through the offer with you or whether a hiring manager directly gives you the offer and you go through it yourself, I guarantee you that you are not focusing on the aspects of the offer that are going to come back and bite you in the ass when it comes time for you to leave. So I charge hundreds of dollars to do this on a consultative basis, but I'm going to do this for you and go through in detail every clause that is in an offer and why you need to be aware of it. Now, be aware that I sit in the province of Ontario in Canada, so your offers might look different than this. So much of what I'm going to review and discuss with you is based on the regulations, policies, and laws in the province of Ontario, and they will differ based on where you live in another province, in another country, in a state, but in general, these lessons hold true. Don't just look for the title, the commission, the salary, whether I'm getting a phone or not, whether I get a computer, what my car allowance looks like. Those are all great things, and I know you care about those things. But those are things that you should already know before the offer comes. You need to be focused on the clauses that are going to burn you in the end. Things like intellectual property clauses, waiver of rights, confidentiality, termination clauses, because termination clauses, my God, do they come back to bite you. I had a candidate that left a career that she was at for 10 years at one company, and she went to another company, and she was there for about a year when she was let go. And in Canadian law, technically they should have paid her severance for her entire time frame, even when she was pulled from somewhere. They would have to have paid her for that. But there was one phrase in her termination clause that stated that she agreed that she would be paid if terminated according to the Employment Standards Act, which was 2 weeks per year. She lost months of severance. I can promise you she will never make that mistake again. So listen up. I'm going to go through junior and senior, and there will be a supplemental video that comes with this. Juniors, don't get caught up in the title. It's internal, and you can change it on LinkedIn. Ask for the commission plan. If it isn't in the offer letter, at the very least, get the OT in the offer letter, the on-target earnings. Make sure you get a copy of the benefits. If they're active immediately, if they're not, make sure you read through the non-solicit clauses, the intellectual property clauses, and non-compete, but know that they are illegal now in some areas of Canada. Review your termination clause, your vacation time, work from home clause, and your probationary period. Seniors, always get upfront your car allowance and how that's going to be calculated. If you have equity or stock options, what is considered to be company property, confidentiality clauses, waivers of rights, how the company feels on partnerships or side hustles, the food and beverage policy, corporate card expense policies. I've got a few sample comp plans that I'm going to share with you and a few sample policy plans. Also, if you check out hireequity.ca, you will see these sample plans that exist on the resources section that you can download for free. There is no excuse for you to get an offer, sign it within minutes, and send it back. You need to do your due diligence here. This is a company that if things go awry, and I really hope they don't, you spending a few days poring over this, knowing your rights, could mean the difference of you walking away with no money or you walking away with thousands of dollars. Also, if you want to negotiate the offer, you should have a few days to review it. You should have about a week. Yes, you can redline it. Yes, you can get legal to review it. Yes, you can get your recruiter to review it. But I do want you to know that the back and forth of going and saying, I want this, no, I want that, that's going to piss off the company. So gather your thoughts all at once and then go back. Most of the calls that I get from someone who is about to leave their company or who has been dismissed from their company are from people who didn't bother to spend the time to negotiate an offer, or people who didn't even know where their offer was or what it contained. Don't be that person. It's very similar to you signing a rental agreement or you having a mortgage. You need to know what you're getting into. You need to know how to get out of it and what you would be walking away from with it. All right, guys, I want to walk you through an offer letter. And this is one of my own offer letters with obviously confidential information on it. But I want you to fully understand what you need to be looking for when you look at an offer letter. I want to add a disclaimer to this. I am not a lawyer. I am not giving you legal advice. I am giving you professional career advice as a recruiter, not legal advice. So I strongly advise that when you get an offer, if you have concerns over the clauses or the legality of it, you hire an employment lawyer to walk you through the pieces that you should be negotiating. But I'm just telling you, over 2 decades of experience and 4 years of recruiting, what I have learned and what you should be on the lookout for. Obviously, you're going to be looking at the title. You're going to be drawn to that. You're going to be looking at your hire date. You're going to be looking at your compensation, which is your base salary. You're going to be looking at the incentive plan, right? You can see here that this says you will be eligible to participate in the company's incentive plan. The incentive plan will be distributed to you shortly after commencement of employment. No. You want that plan up front. Why on earth would you ever accept an offer that tells you that you are getting an incentive plan after? You want to see in writing prior to what your incentive plan says. Hours of work, depending on what type of job that you're going for. This is saying that I agree to work such hours as according to the Employment Standards Act, which is in Ontario and Canada. I highly recommend that you take a look at what yours says, because this could mean here that when it says that its hours of work can vary and may be irregular, that means that I can work in the evening, I can work on the weekends. It also says I agree to work such hours that are subject to the restriction of the ESA. What that means is I might be working way more than 38, 40 hours a week. I'm not going to go over stock units as it states, but if you are in a situation where you're being granted some shares in stock, as you can see here, what's really important to look at is what's the value, whether or not you actually have to put any money in to be able to get that. But if they're granted to you, then you also want to look at the vesting period, and you want to look at the percentage over the vesting period. So you can see here, my value was $60,000 US, and the vesting would be over 3 years. 33% of the grant will vest on the first and second anniversaries of the original date, and then the remainder on the third. So I'll have a certain percentage at the first date, the anniversary of my first date, the second date, the third date, and so on and so forth. Paid time off over here, I'm getting 21 days that are accruing at a rate of 1.7 days per month. And then after that, I am eligible for more days. So essentially what you want to look for here is obviously, do you get that as of day one, or is it an accrual period? Benefits, I negotiated benefits to start from day one. A lot of times that's something that you can negotiate. The reason why companies don't want to give you benefits from day one is in the event that you don't make it through the probationary period and they start your benefits package. Normally they have to pay for it for the remainder of the year. Termination. You want to focus on termination. What you're looking at over here when you look at termination is you want to look at the piece that states that you will or will not be paid in accordance with the ESA. If you will be paid in accordance with the ESA, then that means you will only be eligible to get the amount of termination pay that the Employment Standards Act or whatever is in your province or state allows you for. So you could be cutting yourself out of thousands of dollars if you agree to that. So I want you to look for that clause. Termination with cause, very, very difficult to prove here in Canada and in Ontario. But essentially what this is saying is that my employer could terminate me for cause. If they do terminate me for cause, it is saying that I was granted at least 14 days to correct any deficiencies of that cause. It's also telling me what cause is here: willful misconduct, fraud, embezzlement, theft, so on and so forth. So over here, it is saying that for clarity pursuant to the ESA and or common law, permit the company to, without notice or pay, terminate my employment. So this, for clarity pursuant to the ESA, means that I'm signing away any sort of rights that I would have, and the ESA takes precedence. You do not want this, right? So that's termination with. Termination without cause, which is normally what you would be getting unless you did something egregious, is that they are saying that they will provide me with any portion of base salary that had accrued, so up until that date that I was to be terminated. It's also, be careful here because this is probably not going to include any commissions for you. It's also saying that it will pay me the greater of 2 weeks notice for each full year of completed employment, increasing on the 5th anniversary of your hire date. So if I were to have agreed to this, it would tell me that every year that I was there, I would get paid 2 weeks notice, except after 5 years, I would get paid 3 weeks, right? It's telling me if I sign this, I would only agree to a cap of 34 weeks. And that would be it. Otherwise, again, this benefits which you are entitled to by the ESA. I highly recommend you get this looked at by a lawyer, depending on your province or your state that you're in. Again, you could be negotiating yourself out of thousands and thousands of dollars. Also, the piece about your commissions is going to be important. Most companies will state in their employment letters that you have to be employed at the time of the payout to be eligible for the commissions. So you want to make sure that that's something that you have in writing. Resignation period, it's telling me that I have to give them 2 weeks notice, but it's also saying that the company reserves the right to waive any notice in excess of 2 weeks without payment. So basically what's that saying is if I give 2 weeks notice, they can walk me out the door, but they have to pay me 2 weeks. If I give 3 weeks, 4 weeks, they don't need to pay me anything beyond 2 weeks. It's also telling me they're going to pay me out on PTO. It's telling me if I'm participating in the benefit plan, that the benefit plan will end unless it's deemed by the ESA to be more than the date of my termination. Here you can see the piece about the incentive plan. You can see here, if your employment ends due to termination for whatever cause, you forfeit any entitlement to receive to you. So if you're terminated with cause, no commissions. That's what this is saying. It's saying if your employment ends for any other reason than termination with cause, you will only remain eligible to receive incentive payments earned, but not yet paid during that period. So in this instance, it's telling me that I can get commissions earned, but not yet paid. In most cases, yours will probably say that you need to be actively employed to get anything. So be very careful when you're reading through these sections over here. Also, non-solicitation. I think this is pretty well known in that this is talking about the fact that I'm not going to leave this company and then go and solicit, any of their customers away from them. Normally it's for 12 months. Again, there are obviously ways around this that companies have found out to solicit business, but I want you to take a look very carefully at this agreement. So mine says 12 months. You could negotiate something less than 12 months. It could say more than 12 months. And it tells me specifically what I am not allowed to do during that period of time. And you can see here, induce or persuade any customer, prospective customer, supplier, blah, 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 to do business with the company that I'm at. It also is saying over here that they want to protect their business from the competition, and they expect and direct me to honor any binding and lawful non-solicit obligations. So I could receive a threatening letter if I don't do this. Internal policies, code of ethics, insider training, disclosure, whistleblower, those might come as separate ones. So do look at that. NDA. So as you can see here, this offer is employment is conditional upon me signing an NDA. You do or do not have to sign that. The NDA, this is not a part of all offers. So basically what that's saying is once I leave the company, I won't talk about the company. And instances like this is a publicly traded company. And what they're worried about is that I am going to disclose insider information that could possibly affect the stock price. That would be one example. Personal information, pretty self-explanatory here. Severability over here. Again, it's referring me to the NDA agreement and what I am and am not eligible and allowed to do. So that is very, very important. This is also saying here, if my employment with the company ends for any reason, cause, without cause, resignation, blah, 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 that I am acknowledging that the NDA holds. So there's a paragraph in the NDA that will hold. It's also saying the governing law, even though this company is headquartered in New York City, it's saying the governing law of which this was signed at would be the province of Ontario in the country of Canada. That's why they keep mentioning the ESA. It's also acknowledging that I can get independent legal advice if I would like to. And this, as you can see here, is giving me a period of time to sign back. Make sure that exists in your offer letter. and they should be at least giving you a minimum of 3 to 4 days to be able to review this and sign back, if not 5 to 8 days. If you look over down here, what you will see is you will see the non-disclosure agreement. So again, it's talking about trade secrets, which are your stock options and obviously anything that's happening internally in the company that would affect the stock price. So if you have this, read it in detail, because it is saying, I will not disclose anything, salaries, strengths, weaknesses of employees, anything that's on the computer whatsoever. The computer was property of the company, any pricing, data, cost information. This is intensive. So if you have this, read through it in detail. Non-disclosure and trade secrets. So what it's also telling me here is that if I disclose anything that I shouldn't be disclosing, they could actually litigate against me. So I have to disclose this. I'm also saying that I will not disclose or use any confidential or proprietary information or trade secrets from my former employers. So I'm not bringing over anything with me that could potentially get this company in trouble. Return of materials. Some people try to keep computers, cell phones, everything like that. If you didn't bring it into the company, it should not leave with you. It's a very simple rule that includes data, phone numbers, anything. Keep it with the company. That's it. This one, everybody glosses over intellectual property. Intellectual property is the shit that comes out of your head. So as you can see here, data, databases, designations, design, developments, formulas, technique, processes, know-how, anything that you did during working hours is the property of that company. They paid you for it. It is theirs. If any application for any Canadian or foreign patent, trademark, or copyright related to the useful information in the business of company or any customer or vendor of the company shall be filed by me during the 6 months after my employment ends, the subject matter covered by such application shall be presumed to have been developed during working hours in the course of the company. They own it. Read this through in detail. It talks about copyrights, talks about what you've created, your records. Conflict of interest. This is obviously talking to me about I'm not going to engage in anything that would be deemed to be a conflict of interest, whether it is a side hustle or having 2 jobs at once. Non-compete. These are now stricken from Canadian agreements, but essentially what it's saying is I'm not going to go and work for the direct competition. So know the jurisdiction of where you sit and whether that is legal or not. Non-disparagement. I'm not going to talk shit about my company. I'm not going to go around and be negligent about them, even though there's free speech. I recognize that, but it's going to refer me back to my NDA. Also, this is saying here, I agree that in the event of a breach or threatened breach of this agreement, monetary damages would be an adequate remedy and extremely difficult to measure. I therefore agree that companies shall be entitled to seek an injunction to restrain me from such breach or threatened breach. So they can seek an injunction for money or to shut me up. More legal terminology that you should be aware about as you look through here. Here's me signing. This was my incentive plan. So this talks about the plan overview, the policies. You should always get this with your offer letter. So it talks specifically about the company's goals. I'm not going to go through this with you because this part is proprietary to the company, but I'm happy to review them with you independently. And the takeaway here is make sure this is part of your offer letter. All right, guys, till the next one. I hope you enjoyed this Hire series. I know we're going to have tons of conversations in the community, and that's what I'm looking forward to. There's no way that Vet You, Find You, and Hire You and the 30-day deal breaker could be as lucrative to you and your learning as it has been without all of the information that you've shared with me over the years. So I'm looking forward to bringing that into our Telegram community and continuing the conversation. That's it for now. Thanks for joining.